I'm going to be honest, reading has been one of the biggest struggles in our house. We've done the tears, the frustration, the I hate reading, and the guilt of wondering if I was doing enough. That's why I was so excited to find reading.com. It breaks reading down into simple, bite-sized lessons that actually build confidence instead of battles. If reading has been hard in your house too, this might be the fresh start both you and your kiddo need. You can check them out at reading.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more today. Have you ever looked around and thought, how the hell did everyone else get the instruction manual except me? Maybe you've spent your whole life feeling overwhelmed by things that looked easy for everyone else. Maybe you've been told you're too emotional, too sensitive, too much, or you've sat in the doctor's office hearing that it's just anxiety or depression or stress, while deep down knowing there has to be something else going on. For many women, ADHD doesn't look anything like the hyperactive little boy bouncing off the classroom walls we've been told about. It looks like mental exhaustion, constant guilt, forgetting every damn thing, masking so hard you don't even know who you are anymore. And then, just when you think you figured it all out, your hormones change, and suddenly everything you've been doing to hold it together suddenly stops working. Today's guest is here to explain why. I'm joined by Dr. Jennifer Dall, an ADHD specialist who helps women finally understand what's actually happening inside of their brains, not just during childhood, but through every stage of life, including pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause. In this conversation, we're digging into the ADHD symptoms that almost nobody talks about. Why so many women spend years being diagnosed with anxiety or depression before anyone even considers ADHD. What the heck hormones have to do with all of it, and why so many moms don't realize they have ADHD until they're trying to raise a neurodivergent kiddo. If you've ever thought, why does everything feel so much harder for me? Or you've wondered whether your anxiety is really anxiety? Or if you're entering perimenopause and suddenly feel like your ADHD has hit the gas pedal? Friend, this episode might explain decades of your life. So, grab your emotional support coffee or reheat the one you've already forgotten about 3 times. And let's jump into this incredible conversation and welcome Dr. Jennifer Dall to the mic. Welcome to Chaos Caffeine, the ADHD Parenting Podcast where you do not need a degree to understand your kid. I'm Danielle, mom in the trenches who spent years obsessing over how to do this better, so you don't have to learn everything the hard way like I did. Each week, I bring on experts who actually make sense. And then if you want the real story, come hang out with me on Patreon where I break down how it all played out in my house. What worked, what flopped, and what I'm still side-eyeing. Thanks for being here. Dr. Dall, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
I am excited. I have hardly ever been this excited for a guest to come on because while researching you for this interview, I have more questions than I have ever had for any guest that I've ever had on. So I hope you're ready for my free coaching session today.
Yeah, I will buckle up and let's go.
Before we dive into all of that, do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about you?
Sure. I'm Dr. Jennifer Dall. I'm a former educator. It's been about 3-4 years now. I quit. I left education and moved on to a new choice. I had been working on some coaching, and now through my business ADHD Holistically, and I started my own press, Curveball Press, to publish and put out books. I'm working with ADHD, women with ADHD, and what I call ADHD plus one, which is all those other things that come along with it. Because in my experience, it's never just ADHD. And I've had my experience, my share of experiences in all of them.
That is one of the things that I would love to dive into, if you do not mind. When researching you, you listed some of your...
That sounds so formal. Sorry.
Okay, what I was really doing was I was listening to you've been on. So while listening to those, I heard you list off some symptoms or characteristics that you eventually found out were ADHD that I had never heard of before. Um, for instance, I believe I heard you say that you used to bump into things. And is that a clumsy gal thing or an ADHD thing? So do you mind to dive into some of
It's
those out of the
both.
box?
Sure. So that's a proprioception thing. Bumping into things, also having a horrible time with stairs. If that's a thing, um, in particular, a little offbeat, but there was an Apple store nearby that had, I don't know if it glass or plastic, but clear stairs. And I would go into a terror in that just having to walk up. Something about the proprioception. Stairs are hard, bumping into things. Um, I think many of your listeners may understand that. They may not understand that that's what it was, but they'll realize, oh, that's why I have all those bruises. I would
Yes.
um, I would joke that I run and I can run a long distance and only get a little like blisters and stuff, but I can't walk through a doorway or past a piece of furniture without bumping into it. So yes, it's a proprioception, not visual like my something wrong with my eyes, but just that where my body is in space thing that a lot of people with ADHD have, and they don't know. Like it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I didn't like you had no idea. I didn't know until I knew, and I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. So that's a
Interesting.
big that I think maybe with some people they might kind of feel like the little warning lights go off, hear us talking about this. Like, oh, okay, now I see.
Yeah, I'm imagining all of my friends and family who are like, I'm always so bruised up and I have no idea where these bruises are coming from, but it's clearly, it could be.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll find like you'll see this big, you're like, that must have hurt a lot, but I don't know how it happened.
So you had some others in there in your symptoms that you had listed
Yeah.
off that you had tried forever to get diagnosed and people were, dismissing it. Do you mind going over some others that
Mhm.
may have been out of the box?
Sure. Was there anything before I start that you remember that really stood out to you from what I said?
The one that stood out the most to me was the bumping into things, but I'm sure there was others in there that just did not hit as hard for me.
Right. So some of it's also the hyperfixation and lack of hyperfixation. Some of your clients I felt, you know, like I'm really good at some things. And it's not that I'm not good at other things, but if I'm not interested, I don't care and I don't do it. And so this would cause a lot of frustration, I would say, with, my family, my teachers, my partners. How come you are so spot on and you can hyperfixate and you've done all these things and then other things you just don't do it, or you can't focus on it, or you can't remember things. And so I think a lot of things with girls and especially younger, is that sometimes it's then chalked up to kind of like an attitude problem, maybe. Like you're purposely not doing this, you're purposely being like this, when it's my brain just doesn't work that way. And people don't talk about it. And at my age, and for any of us who's older, nobody knew anything. And so it was, you internalize a lot of those stories. But back to your question, you can tell I have ADHD because I just took a whole tangent there. So it's the hyperfixation. It's doing really well on some things and not on others. Also, like here thing is sometimes with people with ADHD, I need a structure. I need to know what to do, but also I don't want to be told what to do, and I don't like it has the right kind of confines. So I think when I was in education, I did well because I taught mostly high school, and your life is run by bells. So when to go here, when to go here, when to eat, when to go to the bathroom, when grades are due. Summers were hard because that was a longer period of time where there wasn't structure. And then since I left education, this has been a huge struggle on structuring days in a way that I think other people don't understand at all. You know, I knew how to be a student. I knew how to live in that world. And I left that world, and it's sometimes hard to structure all of it. Another thing with ADHD that I think I didn't realize is, and going on that, is sort of having a hard time understanding what you can actually do. So like I would come up with these grand plans, huge things. Another thing is, especially something like, say there's a 3-day weekend. No, there's a 3-day weekend. Okay. And I would make this list that was incredible of all the things I believed I was going to do with that extra day, when on a normal weekend, I wouldn't do a fraction of it. And it was this belief. I mean, like I really thought I could do it. So understanding time and understanding how long things take and what you can actually get done. Those are some of the starting points that people could look at. Some of the other things, people talk about how people with ADHD are always late, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not just being late, it's being completely unable to guess and estimate the time. So I was not late, I was always really early, because I was completely unable for some reason in my mind with time and space. Okay, it's gonna take 20 minutes to get there, and it's gonna take 5 minutes to park and 5 minutes to walk by. But these steps and believing that I could get there, I could do that and get there in the right time was really hard. So I would just be really early. And so if I'm not really early, then I am that person who's running in frantic at the last minute because I thought I could leave at 9:45 and get somewhere at 9:50.
I think if I had my choice as being the chronic late ADHDer, I would rather have your stigma where I would think, oh my gosh, I need X amount of time, but I really didn't. I think I would rather have the other end than me rushing in 5 minutes late every single time.
Yeah. But it's also stressful and it's disorienting because, like, I'm aware that something's not right. I'm aware that there are people who can figure out how to get there at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I'm still not figuring out how to get there at 10 o'clock. I'm just figuring out how to get there at 9:30.
Yeah.
Or, this massive block of unknown time. So I would bring a book or now my
Oh
phone.
no. Yeah.
you know.
So I could spend the rest of the interview going over what you have just said just now, and I know I said this interview would be about ADHD moms or for ADHD moms, but something you said in there hit home for me as a former ADHD girly. Do you mind diving into how ADHD may present in a way where we think our girls are being sassy or rebellious, is what I remember being called, when it's really symptoms of ADHD?
Sure, because I think for one thing is we don't have the language, or we don't see girls as having ADHD. We see certain type of boy as being ADHD, but we haven't and we don't, and our parents haven't, and society doesn't. So behaviors like not doing something, not remembering to do something, right? I've told you to do this and you didn't do it. Also having trouble with multi-step directions and trouble with knowing how to actually start something. Like you know the things, but then you don't actually know how to start the things. And so other people, parents, teachers get frustrated. And I think it is that they look at you and you're like, oh, well, you're intelligent. You're smart. Look at you. You can dress yourself, to be sarcastic. But,
Yeah.
you can do all these things. So why aren't you doing this? And it must be because you have an attitude. You're defiant. You're this, not, oh, your brain works different. Because ADHD, for the most part, is very invisible. It's one of those things, like a lot of the plus ones, where it's invisible. You can look at you, no idea. Plus, you have figured out how to get through school. You have kids, married, whatever. Like you figured out how to do these things, even though it might be really tiring. And so for girls, people look at you and they see one thing and they don't see what's going on inside. They don't see probably all the masking. You probably did a lot of masking. You probably still do to to have it all together. And so when it breaks down, you have a hard time with that. And you add in things like we can have trouble with emotional regulation. I've been told you're too sensitive. And so someone would say, why did you do this? Or why didn't you do this? And then on top of everything else, you then have this emotional reaction, which then makes it sound like you're difficult, you're too emotional. And then it cycles, and then you believe these things, right? Because you don't have another story. More stories are getting out now, but you don't have another story. And that's what you're being told over and over again.
Mhm.
Do you find that that's true? Does this resonate with you?
Yeah, and I think there is a nuanced conversation
Yes.
that will emerge where I think a lot of ADHD people pleasers are really just ADHD girls who have been masking for so long that we appear to be people pleasing, but we're really just doing what society has told us that we should be doing. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Completely, completely. Because it's people pleasing to be safe. It's
Yeah.
people pleasing to get by. It's okay, I want to feel safe in this situation. And if I please in this way, I will be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. That's a
Mm,
big point. And then we have to remember, like, it shows up differently for everybody, right? So we're all a little bit different. And we run into danger when it's like, oh, well, my sister-in-law has ADHD and she does X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C help her. And then assume that that's going to also work and be the same for you because your
yeah.
ADHD shows differently, your plus ones show up differently, your past, your history, your stories show up differently.
That is one of the most
Yeah.
frustrating things that I come across in, and I love the ADHD parent groups. I love them for community and not necessarily medical guidance. And what I mean by that is your child has these symptoms and you're prescribed this medication. And they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to go try that medication, expecting that same outcome. And every time I see that
Right.
posted in there, I'm just like, no, that you can't expect that. And they don't understand. And they're like, you're not being helpful, but that's really not helpful.
Well, they want answers, they want it fixed, they want it better.
Yeah.
Another thing that probably comes up there is, there's that hereditary component.
Mm,
And so if mom has ADHD and knows or doesn't know, you know, her feelings, her interactions, and how it shows up with her versus how it shows up with her daughter, right?
yeah.
It's not like maybe what's another hereditary thing? You have diabetes, right? And it tends to show up in a certain way, and you do certain things.
Yeah.
And that's kind of simplifying it. So it's just different. And if mom doesn't know, or maybe it's dad that has it, and wanting to compare, and at the base, I think everything to be okay, wanting people to be successful and happy and not struggle.
Yeah.
Um, we always want to grab onto things when it's much more complicated than that, in my opinion.
Very true. So if we
Yeah.
could, my ADHD brain will take
Yeah.
you all over the map. So I need you to keep me on track. But one of the things
Oh,
that
good luck with that one, honey. You know who you're talking to, right?
but one of the things that I have not heard that many people talk about, but you did talk about, and that is how, and I have a best friend, and I hope she's not listening right now, but I'm going to use her as kind of like a case study. She has been diagnosed with depression, and
Yeah.
she has been given medication on top of medication on top of medication. That is not working. And I strongly recommended to her, hey, you might have ADHD, but those plus ones that you talk about are often for women, it feels like the first diagnosis, and ADHD is dismissed
Mhm.
and not even considered, even when medication or
Yeah.
other routes is not helping.
Mhm. Right.
Mind blowing.
Agreed completely. And I feel for your friends, and I go through it, and I all of that, like even something as simple as we talked about, like emotional regulation and rejection sensitivity. And so if you go into a doctor and something happens, grief, something trauma, anything from death to, empty nest to any, losing your job, something like that. And with ADHD, you're taking it very hard in a way that other people don't understand. And so then you might go to a doctor and they're like, oh, well, depressed. You might go in for other reasons like, oh, well, that's anxiety. Or, you go in with those symptoms. I'm tired. I have a hard time keeping track of things. Those things that could be ADHD, like, oh, well, you just need to rest more. You need to exercise more, or you need to eat better. And they simply don't look down that road. And then there's women, and I know I had to fight for it, but you might go in and say, hey, I've been hearing about this. And unless it's a doctor who really knows, if I would be put off. And then if you go for, say, SSRIs, SNRIs, that's not really solving it. And then that can cause its own problems. I'm not here to, tell anyone what to do about medication. I know that I was put on one, and the process of getting off the one on has been years, because if you know anybody who's tried to off of one, it is a struggle to do. And so back to your question. Yeah, a lot of things, they go in and the easy answer is you're depressed. And then unfortunately in our community, I think a lot of the answer is take a pill, which I'm not, take the pill. But I also like looking at the toolbox, and then even looking at more of what's behind this. Well, okay, I mean, you may have ADHD and depression, but can we ferret out some of the differences, and what are some things that would actually help you and not just mask it more? Yeah. So it is, and I think because we're talking about women with mental health and women with ADHD, like with health problems with women, so much of the research has been done on them, right? That's kind of been the focus. So then you have to get the information yourself and advocate for yourself, and that can be really hard. I mean, I knew a lot, and I still really, really doubted myself and fought, and and I knew things.
Summer break is amazing until your kid has been bouncing off the walls since 8 a.m. If you've got a neurodivergent kiddo, you know they're usually not trying to be too much. Their nervous system is just asking for more sensory input. That's why we've been loving Ted Kangaroo. Their sensory seats and movement tools help my kid regulate his body so everyone can breathe a little bit easier this summer. If you've been looking for something that helps your child move, calm, and reset, check them out at tedkangaroo.com. And because you're a part of the Chaos fam, use the code CHAOS20 to save 20% on your order. If you're parenting a kiddo with ADHD, you already know the phrase, just take a deep breath, usually lands about as well as the Lego to the heel. That's why I've been loving Moonbird and their kid-friendly version, Moonbuddy. Instead of telling our kids to calm down while they're emotionally feral and breathing like tiny caffeinated raccoons, this handheld breathing coach actually guides them through it. It gently expands and contracts in their hands, helping them slow their breathing without staring at another screen. And for ADHD families, that kind of feels revolutionary. And honestly, it's not just for kids, because ADHD parents deserve regulated nervous systems too. Moonbird can help you slow down and reset. Visit moonbird.life and use the code CHAOSandCaffeine10 to save 10% on your order. Do you mind telling me how... I think we all know, or well, we think we know what ADHD and depression would look like, but how do they overlap, and why are they getting them confused, if you know that answer?
So I can speak from what I've seen and what I've lived through and what I know. And like I talked about, so depression, when you go in with symptoms like that, it can be that, you're feeling things emotionally hard. You're then crying, you feel that way. You're tired, right? That's one of the symptoms supposedly of depression, is you're really tired. But also with ADHD, then you're keeping a lot of balls in the air and you're masking really hard. So I'm doing all these things, but I kind of suspect that it's easier for some people. But because I'm so good at masking, like, you don't see it. You walk in with these symptoms, And they look at you as a woman who's done all these things. And if the doctor, the psychiatrist, the general practitioner doesn't really have a lot of information, they don't even go there. They don't think about it. So if you walk in with a sore throat and they're just looking at the sore throat, they're not looking at anything else because, oh, you have a sore throat.
Mm.
So finding people who know more, I have a really good therapist now, teach her things about it that she doesn't know. And the benefit is that I have the training, I know, and then there's so many people who don't. So how do you stand up for yourself is a problem. Did that
Mhm.
answer your question?
Yeah, I think because in my friend's example,
Yes.
she has told me, like, she has a hard time getting things done. Like,
Yeah.
as opposed to your list of 500 things, and you might go accomplish a few of them, she has a hard time even getting started. And
Yeah.
I think when she went in and she was telling them those things, like, I'm tired all the time and I have a hard time completing or starting tasks. To me, even as a woman with ADHD who has struggled with depression, I would automatically think, oh, that sounds like depression, even though that's probably now just a complete stigma, and we should be diving so much deeper into those characteristics or symptoms.
Yeah. So it's a tendency, I think, to look at just one thing
Mm.
and not look at, well, like, we, are there other things? And further back in your life, when you were in school, did you trouble starting things? Are there times when you didn't have trouble starting things? And then there's what the medications can do to you. Like you said, she's on several, so they can interact with each other. They can also slow you down and make it harder. For her, I feel for her. Um, but yeah, that's a lot of times what happens. And if you don't have that other knowledge or that suspicion even, then you're like, oh, I'm depressed, or I don't know what's wrong. And they give you an option and you take it because you want to feel better. That's what you want,
Yeah.
which is completely understandable. That's what we want. And I think then a lot of times when you do go in and maybe you are more in crisis, it has reached a point where it's like either you realize it or somebody who you love has said, I think you should go talk to a doctor. And so then you show up in not a good space, and it's depression. That's the easy one.
Yeah.
But then we don't look further at, could it also be ADHD or anything else, even diet or any of the other things it could be. I think we kind of want not the easy answer, but we want something that seems clear and that can seem really clear.
Mm.
And so you take it.
I like that you said, measuring back in your life, have there ever been times when starting task wasn't an issue, or looking for patterns, or
Mhm.
differences throughout your lifespan? That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people will ask me, well, how do I know it's not just like our busy, crazy life? Well, yeah, we do have busy, crazy life right now. But when you look back, whether you labeled it that way or you understood, when you get quiet with yourself and you really think, or maybe talk to somebody that you trust who knew you at other points in your life, were these things there and you didn't see it, or you masked it better, or because life wasn't so crazy, you could handle it better.
Mm.
But you didn't just wake up with this. You may have woken up at your limit, but but yeah, so when you were, it may look different, but if you really get quiet and think about it and journal or talk to somebody, do you see that that's always been there,
Mm.
you know?
Noted. I'm going to tell her
But
that
that's
so
hard
that
work,
it is. It really is.
and you get what, 15 minutes when you go to the doctor, and
Mhm.
even if you go to a therapist, if they don't know things about ADHD and neurodivergence, they're
Yeah.
also under the wire. They've got 40 minutes to see or whatever, and you know.
Mm. That is good though. I think that would maybe help her a little bit. I have advocated for her to find a new doctor because if what you're trying is not working and your physician is not hearing that at all, I don't think that's the right
Yeah.
physician for you, but that's just my personal opinion. But even
Yeah,
that is a big change, you know?
it's a big change, and you have to really advocate for yourself. And where a lot of us aren't taught to do that.
Yeah.
Word of mouth. It may be that she knows somebody who has a doctor that, like,
Mm,
this person listens.
yeah. Mm, that would be key, huh?
Yeah, I think it is. And, for her, uh, maybe reading some things, listening to some podcasts, you
Yeah.
know, I find that a lot of time with a lot of this, I know that for me, and other people said this to me, like I will hear something that somebody else says, and that will be like the trigger of helping me think things through more.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't know about the bumping into things, So I've listened to somebody saying something, I don't know, like, because that's their real life lived story.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to hear, and that can be confirming.
Mm. I'm going to send her some podcasts, not this one because I've shared a little bit of her journey, but I'll send her some others.
Yeah, there's one talking, I'm going to pull it out because I recommend this one. I should know it off the top of my brain, but
Yeah,
it's
please.
it's really good. I can visualize what it looks like. I know all the things. It's called Climbing the Walls, and it's from, who's it from? Understood.org. It's like a 6 episode, and she goes in and she's done some research. It kind of started off with the question of, like, why are so many women being diagnosed now? And
Mm,
it's one of those, I think, is really interesting and really listenable. And also, I think that your friend might find that she's hearing things that women are saying. Because with all I know, I listened to it was like it had all these, because it was just bringing up all things. So I'd like to recommend that one.
yeah. Thank you for
It's I
that.
think it's like 6 episodes.
I'll tell her to do that while maybe
Pretty
she's
interesting.
doing laundry or washing dishes or something.
Yeah, yeah. If she likes podcasts.
Yeah. So, Dr. Dall, I know that I said this would be a part of a series for ADHD women, and I stand by that. But I am raising the typical ADHD boy, and he's my only one. And in listening to you, I heard you say something that I had never even thought of again. And I would love for us to dive into it for the moms and parents out there raising girls, because you said something that even if our girls are masking and getting by, then comes puberty and things tend to go off the rails. Do you mind explaining a little bit about that for the parents who are going to experience that one day?
Sure. So they're learning so much more at kind of both ends of it. So for the girls who are going through puberty, and so then for the women as they start to go through perimenopause and menopause, what that really means, how that's changing the brain, and also then even with the hormones, when we talked about, say, the regulation. So if with puberty, hormones, you're getting more emotional anyway, and you have that ADHD component that can combine to be a lot more. Um, I think being up to date or trying to find out more about what they're actually learning. I think even for girls without ADHD, I think that there's probably a lack of understanding about hormones due to them when they hit that age, how it's changing their brains, their behavior, and everything. And probably everyone could learn a little bit more and be a little more understand.
Yeah.
But for the parents, I mean, really trying to think about it in that way, helping their girls get some information about what's going on, both with their bodies and with the changes with the ADHD, um, and being open to it and open to the stories and open to what you're talking about, I think is one of the big things. because it's another plus one where you've got the ADHD plus their lives are changing so much at that point, right? I mean, they're probably going from elementary school, which is a certain way, and then we all know what like going into middle school and high school and groups and just so much of their world is changing
Mm.
that I think helping them find ways to understand their ADHD and what that means to them and what helps them right now will help ground them. It is not going to make it all go away, but it will hopefully help kind of move through this process for everyone involved, the families, the girls themselves. So that's kind of what I suggest is getting an understanding of what your ADHD is now, because it can change how it shows up depending on your life and what really works for you and what you need help with. And then knowing that, yeah, these hormonal changes are ramping everything up. So again, even for a girl without ADHD, what do you need at different times of the month? What do you need when things are happening? Because that's not going to go away. When I taught, whether it was girls, boys, whatever, it was ADHD or other learning disabilities, it's like, we want to get you where you're going to go out there in the world and live your life, right? And we want you to be independent. We want you to figure out what works for you and to understand who you are and not shame yourself and not feel bad about it. So I don't know if that answers your question much.
Yeah, even as I ask that question of like, how can we help our girls who are maybe hitting a hormonal shift? And you said even adults hitting perimenopause. That part didn't even dawn on me as to
Oh,
why perimenopause is coming in so hot and heavy for me. And why I'm now crying over TV commercials, and I'm not normally a crier. So yeah.
mhm. Right. So how do you separate out that with
Mm,
however ADHD impacts your emotional regulation, plus
yeah.
your life is changing. Your kids are growing up. My daughter is now in law school, but like grow up, it changes. It changes you as mom. Like there's so many things, right? It's not just plus one, it's like plus 100 some days. Um, so figuring out the pieces you do know you have ADHD, you do know that you're moving into perimenopause, you do know your kid or child or they're growing up. So what do you need helps you with each of those? And figuring out some of those pieces can kind of help ground you and not feel maybe not quite so out of control.
Mm. I would talk your head off all day. I know I have been so excited for this conversation. But I know you have so
Well,
much
you
more
can always
important
come back.
things
We can,
to do than just talk to me all day.
no,
Before I ask my last
no.
question, do you mind telling our listeners how they can
Uh-huh.
connect with your work further? Because I'm sure then thousands of moms that are listening are ready for that.
Right. So you can get on my email list at my website, ADHDholistically.com. I'm on Instagram at ADHD.holistically. I have two cards, and this might be really good. One of them is the teen edition, at ADHD SOS card deck. It's broken into different areas. Um, and then for each one, this has been very popular. I've been at events. So like this one's, well, you can see it, they can't. It says
Yeah.
school and home, surviving lung classes. Then it talks about the challenge. Um, Never remember all this. And then thinking about it, like, having to focus doing a lecture. And then there's some solutions and mindful tips. I think they're really good for the person going through, but they're also good conversation starters between
Mm.
parents and children, teachers. Sorry. So went off track there. So my website and ADHD and Instagram, and I'm going out to some events. I've done some book events because I really like going out and talking to people there. People love seeing somebody who knows about ADHD there.
Yeah.
And in the fall, I think I'm going to start my own little podcast talking about some things. But the best way
Mm.
to say is to go and check out my website on my email list.
And of course, I'll link all of that in the show notes for our listeners.
Perfect.
I usually have like one last question, but I don't know if I can narrow it down. So I think I'm just going to leave it to you to leave any parting advice for the moms that are listening who may or may not be struggling with ADHD.
I think my advice is to challenge the stories you've been told and you are telling yourself, because they are probably based on maybe some old knowledge or old beliefs, and give yourself some grace to like really look at what's going on and see if you can look at it in a different way, especially if you're struggling. Um, you're doing better than you think you are, and you got this.
As usual, that was the perfect ending. That was exactly what I needed to hear. That always happens in some way. Dr. Dall, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.
I'm so happy, and I'm so happy to talk to the moms and the girls. It's one of those things where that's one of the things you wonder, gosh, what if we had known half of this when that age?
Exactly. Phew. If today's conversation felt like someone finally turned on the lights, you are definitely not alone. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is this. So many women have spent decades believing they're lazy, emotionally disorganized, anxious, depressed, or just bad at adulting. And the reality is that their ADHD was simply never recognized. I am so grateful for Dr. Dall for showing up for this conversation today and sharing her knowledge in such a practical, validating way. She's helping women stop blaming themselves and finally understand the brains they've had all along. That, my friend, is powerful work. If you want to learn more about Dr. Dall and her work, be sure to check her out in the show notes. And if this podcast has helped you at all, the biggest way you can support Chaos and Caffeine is by following the show, leaving us a quick review, 5 stars obviously. But so much more importantly, I need you to share it with another family. Send it to another mom. Text it to your sister, your best friend, your coworker, that mom who keeps saying she's overwhelmed, exhausted, and feels like she's barely keeping her head above water. Because she might not need another planner. She might need answers. That's it for this week on Chaos and Caffeine. I'm Danielle. Until next Tuesday, give yourself some grace. Drink the coffee, even if you have to microwave it 3 times. And remember that progress will always matter more than perfection. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week. If you're a parent in the neurodivergent world, you already know this. We read labels like it's our second job. We side-eye ingredients, we Google brands at midnight, and we're constantly looking for support options that feel intentional and not sketchy. That's one of the reasons so many families, including my own, trust Mary Ruth Organics. Their supplements come in easy-to-take liquid drops, which honestly matters when pills are a hard no. The flavors are kid-friendly, the formulas are vegan, Clean Label Project certified, and the company itself is a B Corp, which means they actually care about what goes into their products and how they operate. Mary Ruth's doesn't promise miracles, and neither do we. What they offer is thoughtfully made, high-quality supplements that fit into real family routines without added stress. If you're looking for a brand that prioritizes transparency, clean ingredients, and making supplements easier for kids and parents alike, Mary Ruth Organics is one worth checking out. Because supporting our kids starts with choosing products we actually feel good about giving them.